All right. Hi, I'm Marissa Aldridge, and I'm here with Jennifer Moon, and we are here to talk to you a little bit about integrating efficiencies into your data collection. So, the first slide is just kind of introducing you to the idea of collecting data. And so far in our class, we've learned that it's really easy to collect data just through your usual routines and habits in your classroom. You don't have to change a lot of things, you're already kind of doing most of the things you need to collect any data. So we're going to talk to you about how to organize all that data that you'll be collecting. So Sager suggests the use of carbonless paper to help tackle the problem of organizing your data. So one strategy he suggests in keeping narrative data is keeping like one file for each student to keep track of each student's kind of narrative data. And then he also suggests making sure that you keep that data in chronological order. So make sure you put a date on every piece of data that you put in a folder. So some examples of narrative data that you might collect on carbonless paper include comments on a test or an assignment, notes regarding a student to a parent or another teacher, or just narrative notes that you keep on your own. And so the idea of using that carbonless paper is so that you can have a copy of it. The note that gets sent home to the parent can keep. And then, if you need a third person to keep a copy of it, you'll have 3 copies to keep organized. And then another type of data is rating scales. And back in chapter 3, Sager discussed using students as RAs to kind of help you out throughout the action research process. So behavioral rating scales are one type of data you can use, and then there are other rating scales that Jennifer is going to talk to you about in just a minute. And the idea is that kids can kind of keep track and take their own data as long as you keep the rating scale in kid-friendly language. So it's really tiny, but I put a picture up there. Even, kindergartners or preschool students could rate themselves just using, a smiley or a frowny face, or it can get more complex if it's with older kids. And then again, the idea of using carbonless paper when they're, rating themselves on a rating scale would allow for the students to keep a copy of it and for the teacher to keep a copy of it as well. And, doing it this way lets the students kind of take ownership of in this example, of their behavior, but, maybe it could be of their progress on a certain skill, anything, and even gives them the opportunity to graph their progress after a few weeks. So Jennifer is going to talk to you a little bit about some examples of different scales you could use.
So the first scale that I have is a behavior rating scale, and I took this from interventioncentral.org, and so it shows how students can rate their own behavioral data. So, like on the left where it says behaviors, you could list different behavior students are just showing, or whatever you're working on for that week or month or year. And the students can rate themselves based on if they did good, fair, or poor. This really helps the student kind of take ownership and kind of monitor their own actions. And then this next piece of data, in the text, Sager talks about how students can collect data on their weekly assessments, and then they can plot this data on a line graph. And so Marissa and I work with elementary age students, and for them that would be difficult. So we had an idea that using a bar graph would probably be more appropriate for them. And you can tell the student as they went through the weeks, their scores went up and then went down and went up again. And this example came from qualitycontinuousimprovement.com. And then the last one, they talk about how you would use a different rating scale if you were doing group work versus individual work. And this particular one focuses on how well groups work together. And this one came from dailyteachingtools.com. And so the teacher could complete this rating scale while he or she is making observations about students while they're working in groups, or the group members could fill it out themselves as they kind of reflect on how well that they did together and give themselves a score.
All right, so we just have 2 quick discussion questions that we'd like for you to answer. The first one is, how could you use rating scales in your action research? So we're really just kind of focusing on the second half of our section in the book, and how you think you could maybe implement them with students. How could students, take their own data, and maybe even just what kind of rating scales you would use or you feel appropriate for your action research. And then the second question is, how do or would you keep up with narrative data in your classroom? So Sager suggested, keeping the file. We're just curious if you have any other ideas of how to keep up with that narrative data, or, if you're not in the classroom right now, how do you think you would keep up with that data in the future?
And then these are our references. On the bottom are the links where I found the rating scales from the previous slides. They actually have several different rating scales on these sites, so you guys can look at those too. Thanks, guys.